Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald, and you know who that one is right there. She's famous all over the world. Rochelle, how are you today?
I am doing fantastic. Life is just so fun all the time, isn't it, Kevin?
Oh, it's a box of cherries or a box of chocolates or something. I don't know. It's because you never know what you're going to get from day to day, but we like to believe that we're going to get some really good things. And I believe this show is going to give a lot of people some really good information and to talk to a guy who is really interested in helping humanity. And he has a company, and it's called Brown Leadership Consulting. He does he does personal issues, social issues, marital issues, family problems, substance abuse issues, and trauma. Adults, couples, families, children. I think that encompasses just about everybody. Rochelle, would you like to introduce him?
Yes. We have a Michael T. Brown here with us today, and he is going to teach us a little bit about leadership, hopefully some skills that I will even be able to learn, and even something Kevin can learn. So thank you for being here, Michael, and how are you today?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. Looking forward to our conversation.
Well, it's great to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your company, if you wouldn't mind. Why you're doing what you're doing, how you got into it, and all that kind of good stuff.
Well, my company, I focus in on counseling support services. Primarily, I see individuals, families, couples here regionally, in the Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia area, and also throughout the country. I get the opportunity to work with individuals and businesses focused on helping people, reach their goals. I'm excited to do it, and I look forward to sharing with your audience today.
Now, the work how long have you been doing this work? How old is the company?
Yes, company started in 2011. My background has been as a school counselor. I did that for about 17 years. Then I transitioned into private counseling. And ever since doing that, it created opportunities for me to also work with, businesses and companies and do some trainings, consulting and public speaking. So yeah, it's branched out since then. So over 24 years in the field.
Well, and I know that hardly anybody has any of the things that you work with, like depression and anxiety, personality disorders, conduct disorders. I don't know anybody who's got a conduct disorder. What exactly is a conduct disorder?
Conduct, our behavior.
Yes. And cognitive behavioral therapy. That's kind of a big deal these days.
Yeah.
Explain a little bit about what that is.
Great question. Cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognition, the way we think really matters, right? Our thoughts impact our emotions. Our emotions impact our behavior. So through therapy, right, we look at our thought life, our emotional life, and the choices that we make. You think about anything that's created, right? It starts with a thought, right? So we get the opportunity to challenge our thoughts, to change our thoughts, the ones that are, that are working for us. Obviously, we double down on the ones that aren't. We know in the year 2025, we can change how we think, right? We can't change what's happened to us, but we can change how we think about what happened to us, how we process things, how we deal with our emotional life, and the choices that we make. So cognitive behavioral therapy, kind of a fancy way of saying our thoughts, feelings, and our behaviors. And if we'll deal in all three areas, we can make tremendous progress in our lives.
Did you ever watch, and I don't know, Rochelle, did you ever watch The Secret?
Yes. Actually, I've listened to it on DVD and I've watched the movie. It's been a few years though.
And one of the things that they say there, and I would love your opinion, Michael, is that thoughts become things.
Mm. Yeah.
Is that true?
I agree with that. The good news with that is that, they don't have to be fixed things. So just because you have a intrusive thought, right, it doesn't lock us into that for life. So I'd say movable things is how I would put it, because we can change our thoughts, so we can change the things in our life. If we'll change our thoughts, if we'll change our choices, right, it can produce a different harvest in our lives.
Then why is it so hard for people to do that and change their thoughts if they don't even know that that's a reality, that that's even possible?
Yeah, that's what therapy can help us out with, is to pull some of those thoughts out and ask them some important questions. Are these thoughts helping me reach my goals? If you don't like what it's producing, right, then we can go back and change and challenge those thoughts. But great point, Kevin. You think about it. It can be hard to change thoughts if we spend a lifetime investing in those thoughts. If our experiences buttress or reinforce those thoughts, it makes sense why it'd be hard to change. That's the tough news, the challenging news. The good news is that the same way those thoughts in a negative light can be reinforced, we can reinforce them in a positive light. So we can choose new thoughts. But ultimately, they need to line up with the goals and the results we want to seek. If it's been working for us, then we stick with it. If we don't like it, we can change it. But sometimes we need help to change it. For some people, it's in therapy. For others, right, it's by connecting with positive people or connecting with, activities that help us reach our goals. But we can change our thoughts, and we can change those results that they're producing.
That is so incredibly powerful that it's so powerful that people don't even think it's possible, or that it's a real thing.
Yeah.
But now in 25, now when you started this in 11 or in
2001,
2001, in those days, and that's when I started Positive Talk, was in 2003. In those days, people didn't put a lot of credit into it or a lot of credence into it and a lot of belief that was even possible. And now we're finding out that cognitively, it is really a thing, that science is going down that road.
That's right. We can reprogram our thinking, right? We can, but oftentimes in order to do that, we got to go back and deal with past pain and trauma. Right? Sometimes we got to go back and rethink what happened to us. We can't change what happened to us, but we can channel that energy into a positive direction. That's why some folks, right, may get a pink slip. One may go home and kind of curl into the fetal position, and another one will jump online and look for new jobs, right? One person may deal with, a difficult childhood and say, because I went through that, that's my reason, right, of why I can't make it. Another person may say, no, this is going to be part of the reason why I can make it. Same event, same pink slip, different thinking about what happened, but ultimately different choices about how to respond to what happens.
Rochelle?
All I'm thinking is, Michael, when did you start learning about all this? Like, when did you decide this is something I want to do and this is how I want to help people?
Yeah, thanks for asking it, Michelle. I'd say it found me before I found it. It's a calling.
That happens. Yeah.
It's kind of, I can't say I sat here and said, I would say naturally I was drawn to the helping professions. I grew up in a minister's home, so I got to see it up front and close and personal, working with people. And the power that can have when we make connections in our lives, right? And so many of us, maybe your listeners could even think, how many times maybe you ran into a brick wall, but there was somebody close to us who saw us struggling and handed us that ladder, right? So for me, I would say it started pretty on being around, ministry, but I'd say pretty early on, I knew I wanted to be in a helping profession, mental health wise. I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like, but I'd say I chose that pretty early on in high school that might be my path.
Well, let me see if I can predict what happened to you. That when you made that decision that you wanted to be of service to humanity and to lots of other people, things just began to line up for you.
Not quite. It's a journey. It's a journey filled with ups and downs. It's a journey filled with personal challenges. It's still a journey today, right? How can I show up and help people when I got my own stuff to work on, right? Well, the good news is that that's part of the connection with people. When people know you're not showing up perfect, that we all got our own stuff to deal with, our own challenges to face, then we can help each other through it. In the counseling world, we call it an egalitarian approach, that the counselor approaches the client as equal, that we all have stuff to work on. We all have things to work toward. And there's a spiritual teaching, right, that says iron sharpens iron, that once we come together in a therapeutic setting, we both can benefit from it, client and therapist.
Let me approach this a little bit differently then.
Sure.
I'm going to suggest that when you made this decision, and I'm not saying that it all became cupcakes and gravy, but all of your
It's quite a meal, Kevin. Cupcakes and gravy. There.
I know.
Breakfast of champions, right?
And some grapes or something too. But what happened is all of your experiences lined up to help you learn what you needed to learn and become the man that you are, so that you would be in a position to help people. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I think you're right on point with that. That our background, our history, our experiences in the divine universe, right, lines up. That, oh, I see why I had to go through this. I may be able to help somebody with this down the road. Or it's cool that I met, right, on April 21st, 2025, get to sit with Kevin and Rochelle, and you have those moments where, like, okay, maybe this is not just a coincidence, that things line up. In that when we're in alignment with our purpose, when we're moving down the road to our purpose, you're right, Kevin, it's not all unicorns and rainbows, but when you know you're heading down the right path, you're able to navigate those challenges because it's something you're working towards, something greater than you. And I can just sense right now, particularly with the climate in this country right now, there's a lot of people, right, that are hearing this that may feel confused or perplexed or hurt by the way things are going. But regardless to where people may fall politically, just life-wise, societally. But I'm an optimist in the standpoint that everything we go through, right, as long as we're in purpose, we're in alignment, and we're passionate about what it is that we're doing. There's an old country saying that used to say, if it doesn't come out in the wash, it's going to come out in the rinse. Right. So you just got to keep working. Things tend to work out. Right. Particularly if we're in alignment with our calling and our purpose.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. It even makes me go down the rabbit hole in terms of thinking, like Kevin always says, well, used to tell me a lot that nothing happens to me, it happens for me. And then I've heard so many different perspectives on that. But thinking about that shift, sometimes I think that we are actually in alignment and we think all these things are being thrown at us as a negative, but really it's the buildup to what we're about to see type of thing. And if you miss that, then the way you see that is very, maybe more than even shallow, just can be confusing more than even just negative. Would you agree with that, Michael?
I agree that, our perspective, how we look at things starts to change that which we're looking at.
Right.
Glass half full over glass half empty, right? If we take on a mindset of realistic optimism, right? Glass half full says, I can do something about my situation. Glass half empty says, I just have to more, just respond to what's happening versus being proactive. Proactive versus being reactive. What can I do about my situation? I might not be able to do something directly, but I may know someone who can help me. And somebody listening today may find themselves in that place of anxiety or fear or depression. And you said, no one sees me. Reach out for help. Let someone know. It's amazing how, right? If we'll reach out for help when we're struggling, there's oftentimes people just waiting to help us. But if we can get over, right, whatever stubbornness or pride or ego, whatever it is that may be blocking us from getting help, there's people trained and equipped to help us. Yeah.
And people that are dedicating their lives to doing just that.
That's right.
And that's important work. It's important work that you're doing. We need to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to ask you how, and Rochelle, remember this because I might forget by the time we come back, how the change of your perspective can change your entire life. We'll be right back. At 67 years young, I never thought I'd feel this good again. But thanks to Purium's Ultimate Transformation Lifestyle, to date, I've lost 37 pounds and gained energy, confidence, and a whole new outlook on life. This isn't a diet. Purium is a complete lifestyle change, giving me all the natural, organic, nutrition-packed superfoods that fuel my body, crush my cravings, and help me burn fat naturally without starving myself. No gimmicks, no guesswork, just a simple, proven system that works. Superfood shakes, detox support, and real results. If I can do this at 67, imagine what you can do. It's your time to feel better, look better, and live better with Purium. Let's do it now and let's do it together. Go to www.positivetalkradio.net and click on the Transform You to get started. That's positivetalkradio.net. Transform You. And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And Rochelle is here, and she is going to remember what question I asked. So that do you remember?
Yes, I remember. Kevin's question was, how can changing your perspective from the now change it forever?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When you pose that question, two words really jumped out to me. One is energy and momentum. Our perspective can help create energy in our life and momentum. I was watching your advertisement there about your weight loss journey. And sometimes, right, we just have to relook at things. And if we'll relook at it, if we'll look at it again from a different perspective, from a different paradigm, it can give us some rays of hope. It can help build momentum. I was watching a video a while back on YouTube, and they were asking someone who worked out. He said, what would you tell somebody who's struggling to get to the gym? And they just don't, they're just struggling with, they just don't want to work out. But they know they need to be healthier. And I like what he said. He said, get up, put your sneakers on, put your training gear on, and just leave and go to the gym. You say, don't think about it, just go. Sometimes, right, the best thing we can do. Now, we talked about thought life, right? That's important. Thoughts matter, so does actions. Sometimes we need to take an action. And then once we get in that environment, different perspective, different environment, next thing you know, you might start lifting some dumbbells. You might start doing your first rep. And then once we get the first set of reps going, the blood starts flowing. Then it's like, oh man, why was I sitting out in the parking lot so long? Right? If we'll just sometimes change where we look. So get out of that. Somebody would need to get out of that bedroom, get outside, and then we can start to build some momentum. And success starts to build on success. 1 pound leads to 20, which may lead to 100, right? Simply because we can change our perspective, it can build energy and momentum. And we know energy and momentum can go up or down. It can lead us down a rabbit hole of negativity, or it can lead us to what Jim Rohn calls a cycle of achievement, right? You get caught up into this whirl of achievement that the more success you taste, the more you want to taste. It's like a championship team, right? Who wins. It's like, how do you go from winning a championship, right? And then just making the playoffs just doesn't seem satisfiable as much anymore, right? The more you taste success, the more you want to taste. So that change in perspective can bring in some rays of light and create some different energy and momentum that we can build upon.
Well, I got to tell you, I want you to go talk to the Seattle Mariners if you wouldn't mind.
There's always next year, Kevin.
Yeah.
Because they need a different, they need to change a perspective that yes, they can, rather than, but you are right that action is an important component of what we are all doing, because you can think a great thought and you can hope that it becomes reality, but it's not going to become reality until you take action.
That's right.
On that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
To come to therapy and just vent. It'll get you so far, right? But ultimately, what are we going to do about it? What changes? What practices can we put into place, right? If you go to the gym and you leave feeling the same, right? We didn't push ourselves. So pushing ourselves a little bit out of our comfort zone is where the growth happens. That's where the magic starts to happen.
Okay, I have a question for you, Michael. Based off all these things, I'm thinking to myself, I've heard people say negative things about the gym, but they know it'd be good for them. I've heard people say negative things about going to any sort of therapy, but it would be good for them. I've heard of so many people that they know what they have to do, and maybe it's the guilt that holds them back of not doing it the first time. Maybe obviously the shift in perspective, but when it comes down to it, almost seeming like an excuse, how would you say you would help route that person to not only change the perspective, but break past the guilt or the excuses they may have made in the time, knowing that if they had started this so much earlier, it would have been so much better?
No, that's a really good question, Michelle. Sometimes the person has to lose more stuff to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
That's the unpopular bad news there.
Yeah. Right.
Sometimes, right, we got to lose some stuff, or ultimatums sometimes have to be made. Not everyone, but some people have to get to a point where maybe this is my last choice, or they get a doctor's note, or, their spouse is talking about leaving them. And I've had those calls. Hey, I don't really want to be in therapy, but my wife says I need to be here, so let's get going. We're like, okay, I can build with that. You're here. We can start with that. And that's where the therapeutic relationship starts. Some of that then becomes my job to connect and create a safe space. So who you choose as a therapist matters. You want to needs to be somebody you connect with and who you believe is going to be helpful and who has a proven track record of success. That matters. Who you get matters. And two, the consequences attached matter. There's a Chinese proverb, right, that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Sometimes the appearance is adversity. It's loss. It's pain. It's trauma. I gotta change my circumstance. I gotta change where I am. And it's the therapist's job. It's the coach's job. It's the mentor's job to, for lack of a better term, to do a sales job, to say, let's move you from where you are to where you're going. The good news is I think some of the stigma around mental health is changing, and COVID helped equalize that. COVID, right, showed us that we all, whether it's on somebody's couch or wherever, we need people. We need to connect with people. We need to be able to talk and relate. And so appreciate that question.
Of course. And I have to just touch on those two things, because for one, you said finding the right person matters. Thank you so much for saying that, because a lot of people have bad experiences and they just are trying to connect to the wrong person. And I love that you touched on that. And the second thing that you said was, okay, I can't remember. Kevin, it's your turn, but thank you for that so much.
It'll probably come back.
I've never actually heard that from a therapist, and to think about that perspective, I think is huge for people, because they're like, oh, well, therapists are this and that. They are also people.
That's right. And you need to find the right fit. That's right. Yeah.
So somebody who understands you, but also, isn't it true? I feel like a prosecuting attorney. Isn't it true, Mr. Michael T. Brown, that it needs to be somebody who's not going to put up with your baloney?
Oh, Totally. Totally. Because at the end of the day, the way I view it, I'm married to results. I need to help produce results. That doesn't mean I can manufacture all the results. It's not, all on me, but results matter. And if we can Google or we can Yelp the best restaurant in town, we need to find who's the best therapist in town. Results matter. Okay. And there's no way around it. There's no way around it.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Well, and when you get results, and I know people and people very close to me that have been in therapy,
Yeah.
and then for whatever reason they say what the therapist wants, they think what the therapist wants to hear, and then so then they're fine, and the therapist says, "Oh, you're not doing badly at all," which isn't, they haven't gotten deep enough to get to where the guy will then break down and say, "Oh, that was just what I was saying, what you wanted me, what I thought you wanted to hear, not this is what's really going on." You need somebody who's going to say, it's nice that you said all that, but I don't think that's accurate. I think you need to go deeper. And that's
very good point. And I'm glad you came back to that point. It allows me to elaborate a little bit more. When I say getting results, right, it's not just plug and go. Sometimes the results that we seek is the client gaining insight and self-discovery. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's I have a place to just share what's going on with me. Sometimes I just need to connect with someone and know I'm being heard. And the therapist's job early on, right, is to set therapeutic goals. Why are you here? What is it that you want to achieve? And accountability, Kevin, is critical. The therapist is imperfect. And that's why we say it needs to be the right fit, because ultimately the client is going to be the expert on their own experience. But people can help us navigate these choices, right, are going to help to lead to this results. This thought process, you going back and dealing with unhealed trauma. Let's spend time working on that trauma, healing that inner child. Because if the inner child, that 4-year-old, doesn't get healed, right, it's going to show up in the life of the 40-year-old. And we can't go back and change what happened to us, but we can help process pain and trauma and difficulty. And there's a blueprint for that can help us heal and forgive and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And on that note, I'm thinking forgiveness. I can only imagine how much you go through that with other people in themselves and with their communities when it comes to forgiveness. And what's a key thing that you would tell somebody that is working on trying to forgive themselves or someone else?
Yeah, that the cost of unforgiveness may be too heavy a price to pay.
Okay, say that one more time. I'm going to take this a note.
Yeah, unforgiveness may be too heavy a cost to pay. Unforgiveness is like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die. Forgiveness does not mean what they did was right. Forgiveness says, I'm no longer going to be held back by what you did to me. So it's a declaration that I encourage people to say, as I encourage myself to say, and it's this: I choose to forgive anyone who's ever hurt me, including myself. And let's face it, that sounds good, and we can repeat that and have that affirmation. But I can hear somebody saying, but Mike, you have no idea what they did. You don't know the trauma. You don't understand the abuse. That's true. I might not ever understand what someone else is going through, but forgiveness does not say what they did was right. It's saying forgiveness equals freedom. That person can move into their destiny when they release the wrongdoer. And sometimes the person who hurt us the most is ourselves, where we have trouble forgiving ourselves. And the same affirmation applies. I'm making a conscious decision to forgive. And sometimes in and of ourselves, it may be difficult. We may need to tap into our spiritual source. God, help me to forgive. The pain may be too tremendous. For those who are different, whatever the faith walk is, or they believe in the universe, whatever, help me, universe, whatever the belief system is, right? We may need to tap on something greater than ourselves. And forgiveness connects to healing. Little forgiveness, often little healing. It's hard to reach our goals, right? If we're just bitter, angry, filled with resentment and animosity. Forgiveness releases that resentment and saying, I'm letting you go. Dad who was not there for me, the person who walked out on you, the person who may have molested you, or would say, you know what? No longer are you taking up occupancy in my head rent-free. Sometimes we have to forget. I'll never forget. I'll share this story, which I'll never forget. Years ago, a gentleman was sharing with me his need to forgive his father, and they had a very difficult relationship. And he said his father passed away. He couldn't bring it to forgive him while he was alive. He said he wrote him a letter, Rochelle, and he put that letter in his father's inside coat pocket in the casket. And he released his dad in that moment. I'm sure it's still up and down and struggle, but it was his way. It was his way of saying, Dad, we're good now. I'm making peace with this. Yeah. Better to do it before the casket closes, though.
It's always good to make peace. Well, let's talk about that when we come back. Does forgiveness mean reconciliation and making peace with that person, or are you just making peace with yourself and moving on? We need to take our break and we'll be right back. Was that okay, Rochelle? Did that make sense?
Yeah, very, very good.
I hope you remember it because I probably won't. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And I think Rochelle is still here. And we're talking with Mark T. Brown. He's got a company. He is a leadership counselor and consulting. It's BLC, Brown Leadership Consulting. If you go to brownsleadership.com, you can find all about him and the work that he does. And if you have a need, and you've also got a new book out. And I believe that is true. Yes, sir?
That's true. A beautiful challenge.
When did the book come out?
Actually, 2017. So it's been around a while now.
Oh, awesome. And then that's really great. So I wanted to get back to forgiveness is not what some people say it is. It doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean that you need to go talk to somebody who abused you like when you were a kid and to say, I forgive you for all the crappy things you did to me when I was a kid. But isn't it a way of just getting past it and getting through it so it doesn't control you and hold you anymore in its arms?
That's right. That's right. Forgiveness does not always equal reconciliation. Let's face it, right? We need to forgive someone who's deceased, or we need to forgive someone that we're no longer in contact with. If possible, if safe, reconciliation might be a possibility. But forgiveness might not be an overnight thing, right? It can be a process that takes time. There's a principle that I use that says, do the right thing, let the emotions catch up later. Sometimes the conscious decision to do the right thing is the driver, because our emotions, right? It's kind of like the stock market, right? It can go up and down. But if we'll make the right decision, we stand on the right belief, the right principle, oftentimes the emotion and the healing can catch up later. That's what affirmations help us with, right? Someone would say, well, why should I say positive affirmations if I don't feel it? No, that's the point, right? You're not necessarily going to feel it. We're saying where we're heading. This is where we're going. But some would say, isn't that fake it until you make it? Mike, if you say, I choose to forgive everyone that ever hurt me, aren't I just faking it if I don't feel it? Well, I look at it differently. I say, faith it until you make it. You're saying it as a declaration of faith, something that you're putting out in front of you to work towards. So no, I don't believe forgiveness always equals reconciliation. But what it can equal is freedom to lay down that resentment, that bitterness, the animosity, because that unforgiveness can block us from reaching our goals and attaining our purpose.
I just had a thought when you said that, and it's like, that is, and I don't have many thoughts. But this is a thought.
You set your own joke up there, Kevin. I like that.
but the thought I had was, if you are allowing somebody who abused you 15, 20 years ago to still be infecting your mind today, you're giving weight and power to them that they don't deserve. So forgive them for what they did and move on and never think about them again, if that's the case. I mean, is that even, I mean, I was just thinking, you're giving power to such a crappy thing.
But it makes sense why we might give it, because some of it is a trauma response. It's not that the person is selecting, how do I keep someone in my head? We might want to, but the pain of the trauma, the memories can be so difficult. There is trauma-based therapy that can help us navigate that if that pain is so deep. And sometimes we're still connected to the wrongdoer. That's why boundaries matter.
Yep.
That shifts the conversation a little bit now. Forgiveness is one thing, so is boundaries. To say, I love you, or I can forgive you, but I'm going to stay over here and you stay over there.
Mm-hmm.
Because if not, then we're positioning ourselves to continue to be hurt. So that's where therapy can help. That's because therapy can help us process the pain, the trauma, and channel it. What do I do with this emotion connected to it? I might still be angry. Sometimes we got to walk with a limp. The limp says, it happened. You're not just going to positive pop psychology our way out of this. No. It's real. Triggers and traumas can be there. We may have to walk with a limp, but we're still walking. So we can't necessarily forget what happened. And it may be a daily choice when that trigger comes up. Remember they did this? Remember they took advantage of me? Yes, I remember. And I can sit with that feeling and allow ourselves to feel however we need to feel. Let me park there. It's okay to feel however you need to feel. Well, let's just hurry up and get over it. Not always. No. Sometimes I gotta walk with this limp. You say, well, how do you know when I've forgiven? I'm glad you asked. I say it's kind of like a childhood injury, right? You may look at your elbow and see the scar. Oh, that's where I fell off my bike. But I can look at it now and still be okay. It happened, as a matter of fact, but I'm healed. I see the scar, but I'm healed. Yeah.
And eventually, if you live long enough, it becomes a funny story. Everything that has happened to me in my life has become, at one point or another, a funny story. As an example, when I say I had a bad country music song experience, which was, a number of years and stuff. But I wanted to ask you this. I'm a firm believer because I've seen it in my life many times. Michelle's younger. She's also seen it. Where does karma play into this?
Wow. Hit me with some softball questions I see here, Kevin. Just figure out the meaning of life here in an hour here. No, this is good. This is good. This is good.
Nothing you need to consider yourself for, but
I know, very, very, karma. There's a spiritual teaching that says, right, what you sow, you shall also reap. Whatever you plant produces a harvest. So key that you mentioned that, because let's face it, sometimes we're the person who needs to be forgiven. Yeah, that knife cuts both ways. Maybe we've made some choices. Maybe we've hurt some people. Yeah. And the only thing we could do, well, we could apologize and try to be better, obviously. But one thing we needed from the other person was for them to forgive us and extend grace to us. Karma, the principle of sowing and reaping, right? What goes around comes around, is a great reminder of what harvest we want produced in our lives. I heard it recently. I really like it. It says, people who don't like the rain a lot of time haven't planted any seeds. If you planted some good seeds, then we love seeing the rain coming because it's going to help produce that harvest, right? So sowing and reaping, karma says, let me do good so that I can get good. Let me not act out. Here's what happens a lot of time, right, guys? Hurting people hurt people. So if we're acting out of what someone else did to us, we tend to perpetuate it towards someone else. So this is so important why we need to heal so that we don't become the offender as well.
And the sad thing is, Michael, is that at one point or another in all of our lives, we've always done something that we need to be forgiven for, because for whatever reason, except of course for like Rochelle, she's never done anything wrong. She's like Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way.
Oh, Kevin, do I wish that was true. I would say more than anything, giving through this whole journey of trying to become better. And I have a question for you, because I know we need to take a break here in a few minutes, but going into that whole process of forgiveness made me angry, for one, and made me really sad for my old self, because there was a part of that. I think that this will lead into my question when we come back, which is how much you hear people say that they're looking back now at their old self, or maybe they've related to the feeling of like, I feel like I died. Like a part of me is no longer there, because so much of it was forgiving myself. Maybe someone did hurt me, but maybe I had my part to play in allowing them to hurt me.
Absolutely.
And maybe I could have avoided this situation. Just all these things of really, it all came back to me, because I learned that I do have fully control of my life, because I have control of myself, and I can choose where I'm placing myself and what I'm going to allow, which I love that you based boundaries off of that. But it's kind of hard, because like you said, when you're connected to the person who caused that trauma, and that's yourself, it's this whole tug of war game of emotion and thoughts and even physical action. I saw that's where I turned the gym into something that probably wasn't so healthy, because I felt the pain inside and I wanted my body to hurt worse. I was going for hours and hours and hours a day, just straining my body. And so really what that led into was setting boundaries with myself. Because a lot of times we're so easy to set boundaries with other people. But when you have to forgive yourself and set boundaries for yourself, and you realize it's all internal, it can become like something that's just about to pop,
Yeah. No, I look forward. Want me to address that when we come back, or now?
Yeah. So, Kevin, if you're okay with it, we'll take this break just over half a minute early. So when we come back, I just want you to follow up anything you have to say about what I just mentioned.
Absolutely.
And whose pretty puppy is that?
That's mine.
Oh, somebody's at your door. Well, you can handle that. We'll take a break and we'll be right back.
As you go about your daily life.
No, I already took.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew a girl so smart, so responsible, she must be a keeper.
And welcome to your therapy session for today. We have Michael T. Brown here, and Rochelle's here, and I really love the fact, Michael, that this show lasts an hour because we can get into some deep conversations about stuff, and it's not superficial anymore.
Absolutely.
It really is deep about boundaries and forgiveness and even karma and stuff. So it's really cool. Thank you for being here. And
I'm glad to be here. I'm enjoying this.
Thank you.
And Rochelle, and did Michael? Do you?
I remember the question.
Remember the question? Cool.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
talked about
It wasn't necessarily a specific question, but
You talked
there
right,
was a lot.
Rochelle, about. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. You talked about looking back, right, and asking ourselves, what role did we play?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, very, very important. That's the self-accountability, where we have to not just go back into our past with the sledgehammer, but go back with the scalpel and ask, where can I take responsibility? We don't have to take responsibility for someone else's actions, but it's important to take responsibility for our own. And instead of re-injuring ourselves, we need to deal with the root cause. Where did it hurt? What happened to me? Why did it happen? We might not get that answer of why it happened, but we can certainly start to delve into who, what, where, when, why, how. And then I call it my 5 phases of awareness. The first phase is the awareness phase. This is how I help people navigate pain and trauma. The first phase is the awareness phase. What happened to me? The next phase is coming to terms with it. Can I make peace with it? Maybe I can't make peace with it, but I need to at least come to terms with it.
Mm-hmm.
My role as well. The next piece is forgiveness. And we talked about that right at length, what it is and what it isn't. Then healing, and then moving forward. And looking at our role in it is really where we can do some really good work, because trying to figure out why other people do what they do, good luck with that one, right? I mean, it's just tough. I'm trying to figure out why I do what I do, right? That's enough work right there. So taking personal responsibility, personal growth and development, to say, I'm not going to keep re-injuring myself. I'm not going to be able to necessarily drink or work out my way into a healthy relationship. Those are actions I can take that can help, but we need to deal with the root cause. Because if not, then we're kind of just putting a Band-Aid on something that might need surgery. And where do we go for surgery? Mental health wise. Well, therapy can help with that. Someone who can help you navigate what happened, process what happened, heal, but ultimately get some new strategies moving forward. And then we're faced with a choice. Do I let my poor decisions, the things I can't change, what do I do with those things? Well, we got a couple choices there. Lament, implode. Do I need another drop kick to myself? Another pile driver for myself? Okay, go ahead. I know sometimes I'll say, go ahead and get it out. Get it out. Need some more? Okay. Now where we going? Let's channel that energy. So some athletes play with a chip on their shoulder. They're using past pain and trauma as fuel. I love what one of my mentors, good friend, says, let your pain be your best friend. But that's oxymoronic. How do you use your pain as a best friend? He said, use it as fuel. Because maybe I messed up in the past. You're not getting me again. I'm going to use this as fuel to be better moving forward. And that's why I appreciate what you guys do with this platform, right? What you bring to the table, giving people an opportunity to have these type conversations. Using this platform, right, is like using fuel, helping others. And I commend you for that. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Michael, because the thing is that we all have suffered trauma. We all have things in our life that we've done that we're not particularly proud of, and situations that we may have created, or people that we may have hurt. either on purpose or inadvertently. And so we're all guilty as charged of being in both things, both the victim and also the perpetrator and stuff. So we have to face that and then realize, well, we can't do anything about that now, but we can make a difference in the future.
That's right. What's the difference between oftentimes a victim and a victor? I'd say are two big things. One is perspective. How do I look at what happened to me? We get to choose what we call ourselves. Some people may call themselves, right? Cancer victim. Another may say a cancer survivor. That's a choice. We get to choose what we call ourselves. And two are the actions we take in response to it. Perspective and response. In order to get the right perspective, in order to get the right response, sometimes we need help. Sometimes we need someone else's perspective about what we went through. Yeah.
Because that can change our own perspective, but we can't see it from the inside necessarily.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
I think the last thing I really want to touch on, Michael, is when it comes to constructive criticism, because there's so many angles and so many sides to that. And I think a lot of people, they do really want help. They know they need it, but they're so scared to have to take that responsibility and get that criticism that isn't always so bad. And how do you help people kind of change their perspective on that when people are finally, because I think that's a big part of it, is when I've been forgiven by somebody, they gave me that constructive criticism. They let me know what I did that hurt them and how I could have fixed it or why it affected them the way it did. And that was kind of hard for me to come to terms with because I didn't know how to handle it within myself.
Yeah, really good question to show. I think the key word there is constructive.
Right.
Some people are pouring into our lives. Are they being constructive or destructive? What are their intents? What are their motives? So hopefully it's put in a way that's ultimately aimed towards building us up. The criticism can be more palatable and malleable when you have a strong relationship, when you know the person you talk to cares about you.
Right.
Some people, are good at blowing up bridges. Others are good at building bridges. Two different skill sets. And if we got people in our lives that just want to blow some stuff up, right? It's not, then it's not going to land well. But if you got people who actually, that's a different skill set to build into people's lives. In a therapy sense, right? We might not get into that so much right off the bat. We just get to know you. You tell your story. We process. We set goals. We create a safe space. So somebody who's listening, you may see somebody, a family member or friend, and you see them making choices or hurting people. Maybe you just create a safe space for them. Mm-hmm. Maybe you've heard it put this way, right? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So love and care can help set the groundwork for when it's time to lean in and hold accountable and point out things that can change. Hopefully it lands better. But ultimately, it needs to connect to the results they seek. Because we just can't pat you on the head and stroke you into results, right? Sometimes we gotta turn the heat up and say, here's some strategies, here's some tools, and then come back and see how you did with those strategies and those tools. You're not going to necessarily get an F on your report, but let's just say what can we work on and get better moving forward.
Now, when have you ever heard this said to you or any, Rochelle, this is for you too. Yes, I was super critical, but I do it out of love.
Yep. My whole life.
Does that make this from a therapeutic sense? Does that make any sense at all?
On one level, it does, because remember, the person who may be trying to help us might not have the best tools themselves. Mm-hmm. That's where grace comes involved. You may have that cousin or that uncle or that aunt who you might not want to look forward to seeing at the family reunions, right? but it's kind of like, Uncle Joe, he's going to be uncut in the way he says it, but Actually, if you go back and think about what he said, there's some content I need to deal with. It might not be polished, but you need to sit with what he said. So that's where we try not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Deal with what's legitimate about what's being said, and the part that is not helpful, sometimes we just got to discard that. Yeah.
Michael T. Brown, we have really, really enjoyed this conversation. And I want to take a couple of moments. Well, I'm actually going to have Brashelle do this. Brashelle, what happens next?
So first, I would love for you to share the information about how people can reach you, get in contact with the work you're doing, and get curious about how to help themselves a little bit. And then anything that you'd like to share with our audience before we go.
Absolutely. I can be found on X, formerly known as Twitter, at MTBrown98. They can go to my website at brownsleadership.com or just Google Michael T. Brown. You should be able to find me there. I do speaking engagements as well and trainings and leadership consulting. They can even email me at email@brownsleadership.com. And I'd love to connect with your audience and see how we can help them out. Closing thoughts, I would say it ties back to what we started with, and that's purpose and passion. I think when our purpose and our passion lines up, then we're really setting the stage for success. Purpose, right? The reason for which we exist, not messing around with it, trying to discover it, because it's a journey, right? But if we'll be on a path towards discovering our purpose and we get excited about it and we invest in it, we're going to see success and see results. But we know, right? We got to do our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, our relational health in order to reach that purpose or to really be on a journey towards that purpose. So be encouraged along the way. And thanks again, guys, for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
We have, and I can't speak for Brashelle, so I'll let her speak for herself. Brashelle.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. Like I said, I did learn a lot from you. I knew I would. I'd love to have you back on the show to talk about even more and beyond, like we started doing. And just having the knowledge you do and going through the life and having the perspective you're able to have and how you're able to transform other people in that way, and also have that grounding that knowing we're human, we're equal, I'm right here with you, we are one, there is no I'm above you or you're below. Because I think a lot of people think that when they go into therapy. You've just changed and shifted so many perspectives, even for me to share with other people. And one good takeaway I'd love to share with you that I got was, if somebody is going through something or they know they need to do more and won't, my question now for them is going to be, what more do you need to lose until you'll do that for yourself?
Wow.
And I will also think about that in myself. Because sometimes I really do. I push myself too hard, and it's like, maybe you should just take a step back and evaluate where you're at. And can you please leave us with just one key thing as something to remember through the week?
Something to remember through the week. I'm going to tie back into what you just pointed out, and that is we don't have to lose more. Choose to gain. If you're struggling, ask for help. There's no shame in asking for help. Oftentimes the shame is to need help and not ask for it. And then, Brashelle, I appreciate you considering having me back. I'd love to come back. So I appreciate that.
Of course.
And I just want to give you Michael T. Brown. I don't think you've heard this from me before. Brashelle has many times. But I'm going to give you the gospel according to Paul McCartney. Let it be. It's going to be all right. Let it be. And remember, who you are today has nothing to do with who you can be tomorrow if you choose. Michael T. Brown, go to his website, brownsleadership.com. We love having you here, and we're going to have you back. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you take to heart what Michael said. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got.